All right. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Paul Myers. Paul is the president and co-founder of Lantrn.ai and the executive editor of Mineral King Publishing in the San Joaquin Valley in California. And we had a really long, really cool conversation last week. So we decided to get on a podcast and put it out to the world also. So, Paul, thank you for joining me.
Hey, man, happy to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So for the audience, I'd love if you could just give us a bit about your background, what led you into local media and Mineral King, and we can get to Lantern later probably, but just your kind
Yeah.
of background in the local media space. Yeah.
Yeah. So I fell backwards into media in general. I had gotten my education over at Fresno State with my bachelor's and master's in public administration. So I was planning on going into like policy and politics and government. And then as fate would have it, the economic world just collapsed in 2008 through, 13 in my neck of the woods. And so when I came out of school, there were no jobs in my field because where I was looking to go, and I told you this last week, was the place where a lot of people ended up getting pink slipped or laid off. And then by the time I came out of school, they were returning into the workforce. So their 10 to 15 years of experience was much greater than my zero. So it was really difficult for me to kind of break into that. And I had no connections in that space as it was because all those people were laid off whenever my mentorship opportunities were right in front of me. So I ended up going back to work my high school job at 23 and I was working at a golf course in my hometown. And then a buddy of mine started freelancing sports for the local paper. And I was like, I need money. Will they take me too? And so they were nice enough to let me cover some games. Eventually, my boss, now my business partner, he needed help covering city council meetings, having a background in or an education in public administration made the city council meetings really easy and interesting to cover. So for me, it was like kind of hand in glove going from, matching the government side of community to the actual, rubber meets the road side of community and just putting it out to the world. So from that point on, I just kind of stuck with it. And then eventually we kind of transitioned to, I don't want to just cover the news. I want to actually help small publishers actually make it because you see the numbers, the number of newspapers that are closing all over the country, is in the hundreds, if not thousands over the years. And so that was kind of the mission that I ended up adopting. As soon as I kind of figured out like this journalism thing's a lot of fun, it's also extremely important, not just for the people who are in it, but for every community that has it. And so my mission kind of grew from I want to cover local city councils to I want to make sure that local news is around when I have kids and they grow up or when their kids grow up, you know?
Yeah, it's important. It is
Yeah.
very important to have that
Well, I
local
mean, like,
information. Yeah.
and look at our politics today, right? I mean, like, if you were I have this great idea for an ad that I'll probably have AI build is if you were just to stare down at your phone screen and take in the news that comes out of that, you would think that the world is a hellscape. But if you look up and you walk around your community for a little bit, you realize people are pretty nice. Your communities are typically not as scary as some talking heads would have you believe. And if you just picked up your local paper or just paid attention to your local news, not all the crime, but the conscientious local news, you would kind of realize that, like, you know, the world is a pretty good place and where you live in it is pretty nice. We just don't really have that vehicle that gets into people's algorithms to show them.
Yep. Yeah. Are you familiar with Bill Hicks, the stand-up comedian?
Uh-uh.
From I think he passed away in the 90s, but he was really big in the 90s. I think it was him. There's this old clip of him where he's like, I was like watching the news and like cities are burning, people are being shot and murdered. He's like, I step outside and it's just birds chirping and somebody walking the dog. It's like none of
Right.
that's happening here. It's I butchered that, I'm sure, but something similar. So yeah,
No, that's really funny.
yeah. So that's kind of a good segue into the next thing. So you told me, and so For context, Mineral King publishes in the Central Valley. Is the San Joaquin Valley and Central Valley the same thing in California?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
sure. In
When I say
Calif,
the valley, it's the big one, not
right.
the like every other valley people are talking about.
Yeah, yeah. It's so, and you guys published there, and you told me in our initial conversation that if you can make local journalism sustainable in the Central Valley, you can make it work anywhere. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about that, what it is about your community that makes it such a proving ground for local news, and also maybe like the challenges you're facing, and if you could just talk about that, the business model.
Yeah, so we publish in Tulare and Fresno counties, and so there's 8 counties that make up the Central Valley, but all of them have they don't look exactly the same, but they definitely have their own benchmarks and hallmarks that like I could point out a valley town if you just showed me a city. And that's because there's so much agriculture here and then there's so much government here in terms of like the economy and then there's like a sliver of the economic pie that is like free enterprise. So when I think about sustainability, like it's not just, you know, are we gonna I think of it in terms of a free market way. So I'm not talking about nonprofits or anything that's philanthropic in terms of news. So I'll just set the stage there. I'm thinking about it in terms of how do you get your newsroom department to fund itself and pay for itself? And to me, that's what I mean by sustainability. Because right now, we fund it the traditional way, which is the newsroom makes content and then we cultivate an audience and then we sell ads to that audience to pay for the journalists. And that's really just that's another business. That isn't the news business. That's a marketing business that has a department that makes content. That's really what that is. So when I talk about sustainability, I'm very specific. It has to be that the newsroom stands on its own and makes money all on its own to fund the journalists that make it. So if you didn't have a sales and marketing team to go out there and do outdoor sales or whatever, this newsroom still needs to make it. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're aiming for. We're trying to do away with a support model. Right now, we still have that support model because that's the way that it is. But we need to start figuring out ways that we can take the information that our journalists are gathering and then turn it into a product that people are going to buy. And so right now, like every other newsroom, that's almost comes exclusively through subscriptions. So if somebody wants to fund your newsroom, they need to buy a subscription, which makes sense. The problem is that subscriptions and individual copies of papers are so cheap that it probably doesn't even cover the postage that it takes to send the paper out to your subscribers. And that needs to change. So what we're trying to do and what our mission is to raise our subscription rate to an insane level. Because if we did that, every subscription would be $1,000 a year. And that would be enough to hire some journalists now and then into the future. We need to think outside the box on that, which is why we had brought up Lantrn.ai. Because what AI gives you the capability of doing is taking information that your journalists are getting, and not only getting, but they're the best at getting information, and then repackaging it into a product that you can then sell B2B. So let me flesh that out a little bit. And I might be getting ahead of you on the
No,
questions.
no, no. That's right where I was gonna jump out of order anyway. I think it's a
Okay.
really good spot to get into Lantern because it's a really cool idea. Yeah.
So so there's a few things that you can do. And I use this example with you, and this is the example I use with everybody. You can imagine that if you had a reporter on a planning commission beat in your community or in your county, however, that that reporter's out there just going about their job, keeping everything the same, writing the stories, gathering the information, looking at the agendas, doing the interviews, so on and so forth. And if you can capture that information and then rework that information after the story comes out, say it's for zoning, say it's for annexation and zoning, and you can put that information into a vehicle of some kind that works for developers or subcontractors or people who are, in land futures, and you can sell that information to them. You've now taken what somebody would buy a subscription for $100 a year, And now you've sold that information to a business who would pay $500 a month because they can't get that information anywhere else. And they don't have a staff member that's going to go and sit at the planning commission meetings. So, by the simple course of your journalists doing their job and capturing that information, you've now 10x, 20x, 100x their output in terms of revenue because you can sell that information in a new and novel way. That's what AI allows you to do. That's what Lantern is trying to do. And so then your newsroom now has the capability of taking in more money than just through a subscription. Taking it in, you're also taking in revenue from a B2B type of type of revenue source. And right now, in the traditional sense of funding news, we don't have that. But I think with AI, we can. I think with Lantrn AI, we can.
Yeah, it's such a cool idea. And I think the example I given you when you brought it up to me initially was my friend. I'm in Montrose, Colorado. It's a town of 20,000 on the western slope of Colorado. And my friend here and his wife opened a Jimmy John's in town, like a sandwich, like nothing to do with local media or anything, a sandwich franchise. And they had a building built. Yeah, actually, there was like 100-year-old house on the lot. They had to get moved. They moved it to this Old West museum, like up the highway,
Wow.
which is actually
They
pretty
moved the
crazy.
house.
They literally put it on a truck and moved the house, and it's out at this Old West museum now because it's like a historical building. Anyway, they moved the house. They built the building that has a few other business. It's like a not like a strip mall, but a couple other things, and then launched the business too. And they were cutting through red tape with a machete for years and trying to figure
Yeah.
that out. And I think this would have been absolutely no brainer like purchase for them when they were doing that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, is like the newspapers, and I say newspapers broadly. What I really mean is like local news sources. These can appear online for certain, but historically, we'll say for newspapers, you were the information hub of your community. People went to you to know things and what was going on. We and our goal as an industry should be to reinstitute our position there at the center of our communities for information. So using the example of your friends, what I would envision a Lantern AI being, or a Lantern AI powered newsroom being, is not just that you want to open up the franchise of Jimmy John's, but there is the information through these tools that you're on this lot. Here's what was on this lot before. Here's the type of, in California we have CEQA, which I don't know if you guys have that in Colorado, but so red tape is astounding on the environmental side for us. So if you could start cutting through that red tape, but also for new business owners, like, hey, when you start a business, here's steps 1 through 10. You have to go to the county, you have to get your fictitious business name, you have to file with the Secretary of State. Here's all those things. Here's your checklist. And by the way, that's just the starting line. The next thing you have to do is market yourself and sell your products. Here's some ideas in your area as to what we think would work for you whenever you're trying to reach out to the community. Like that, and that could all come from your local information source, because they're the ones that are the nexus of so many different industries in the community. So we should be able to harness that information and then provide it to somebody in a way that they can accept instead of just the news.
And I imagine even marketing that product would be pretty easy. First of all, you're
I
the
think so.
trusted news source in the community. Go to the Chamber of Commerce. Hey, anybody that wants to start a business, send them here. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I'm just going totally off script because I'm interested in this stuff now. So you've clearly put a lot of thought into this and you've got it built out. What's the status of the project? Are you actively doing this? Are you like monetizing it yet? Your area?
Yeah.
I don't think we really talked about that on our first call.
Yeah, so there's a lot that's still like in flux. I mean, essentially, if you're gonna talk about it like a plane, we have the blueprints of the plane, and then we're kind of piecing together the engine and the propeller and then the wings. And all of that is a heavy lift on the technology side.
Mm-hmm.
And not because it's difficult to source this stuff per se. It's just that the most efficient way of doing it is constantly changing. So
Right.
I would say, so every time that we have something that we think is pretty built out, or an idea, or it's not even the ideas are pretty well built out. Uh, every time that we think that we have a mechanism going forward, something better comes out, or that makes that way obsolete. So it is shifting sand a little bit, and we'll probably continue to do that for a little while. And but in terms of like, is this a product ready to go? Not exactly, not yet. We're still very early on, but it's very much in the works. And in the works often means we're waiting for the sand to settle for the most efficient way forward.
Yeah.
And for right now, I think what I'm trying to do is just trying to get people comfortable with the idea of using AI. Because especially in news, because so many folks, when they hear AI, they think a chat box. They think OpenAI, ChatGPT, and that you would want it to help you write your stories. I am saying don't do that. It's probably not the best that you do that. I actually think newsrooms should operate at their optimal capacity, should operate at a level of acceptable inefficiency. Because if you're the most efficient you can be, you will miss stuff. And you don't want to miss anything if you're going to be the information hub of your community. So trying to get folks to understand, like, okay, if you're going to use this, don't use it in such a straightforward manner the way that OpenAI would have you. Think a little bit outside of the box of having AI do things on your behalf, not writing the stories, because you don't need to be more efficient per se, but using an AI agent to, like we were talking about before, repackage this information into helpful, useful items. I mean, I don't know a publisher who wouldn't want something like that, as long as it's, as long as it's vetted and trusted information, and the outputs are equally so. And so, just trying to get folks to come around to the idea is a bit of a feat on its own.
Yeah, I see that a lot just doing this podcast, and like work with other publishers. Yeah. And we talked about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that, like, as good of an idea as I think that I have, and I think every idea I have is great. You know how it is.
Me too. Me too.
If I took this, I think that if we had just exactly what I explained, if we had all of that ready to go, sitting somewhere waiting to be downloaded or used or whatever, I don't think the market's ready for it. I really don't think that it would be well accepted. I think it would be very slow to adopt right now, just because we haven't prepped the ground for this. Like, we're still thinking about ways to better support newsrooms, and we're not thinking about ways on how the newsrooms can support themselves. And that is a tectonic shift that needs to occur in the local news space in order for my ideas to have any chance of taking root.
And like you said, things are changing so much. It feels like we're still in the middle of the earthquake right now, waiting for
Yeah.
things to kind of settle and everything. Things are changing so fast. So thanks for explaining that, like the state, and you're kind of putting the plane together as you're trying to take off and everything. So flash forward, say you're going to put together and everything. Is this something that like you could grow this company like to scale across the nation, or do you kind of have to be embedded in the community? And if that's the case, is this like a framework you could provide to other areas, or how do you think about that?
A good question. I mean, the scale on our side would probably have to come with a significant capital investment, just because of
Right.
sheer amount of data that you would be dealing with. And also, not all data is good data. So you can throw everything at this stuff, but if you have to say, like, well, some of that's off the record and some of it's on the record, and you do podcasting, well, we could talk for 25 minutes before we ever get into like the good stuff that people would actually like want. So you do like also need this mechanism that's going to do an initial filter through some of this stuff. So like that is to be understood. And that's also part of the complexity of building out these tools. I think that there is two interesting concepts here. One is in terms of just the AI position right now. One is that if you're a physical newspaper I think you have a very good chance at survival today, the way that AI is going. The hard part is that the publishers have to get a lot better at marketing themselves and selling themselves. Because here's what's going to happen in the AI age is that when you go, and I just use ChatGPT because most everybody understands the name and knows what we're talking about. So if you go to ChatGPT, right? All that ChatGPT is doing, besides giving you some answers and spitting back some things that it thinks you want to hear and predicting kind of the next concepts you're going to hit. If you're using it for internet searches, it's essentially just a filter between you and the internet, searching the internet more effectively and faster than you could do it on your own, and then giving you a broad consensus answer. That is a massive problem for online news outlets because online news outlets, they get paid off of audience and viewership. So when AI is the one that's scrolling the internet, not the human, what good are the ads that you put on your stories? Because the human isn't seeing the ads. And so therefore, if you're an online news only organization, you're probably making the vast majority of your money off of advertising. And if let's just take this to an illogical extreme, if everybody's using ChatGPT to search the internet for information, why would these companies advertise on your page? Because the people aren't seeing it, people aren't going to buy it. So if you're online only, you're going to really have to start thinking about what your next revenue model is going to be. And if you're wondering how serious of a problem that is, take Google, for example. Google now gives you the AI overview on
Mm-hmm.
top of everything else. Google's bread and butter has always been advertising and search. So search engine optimization or sponsored content has been how they make the vast majority of their money for almost their entire existence. And they are telling people, hey, when you come here, I'm going to give you the AI overview. And they're doing that to spite their business model that got them here in the first place. And as a result, we've seen less traffic on online only news sites. I saw a report that it's like 40% less than what they were getting. So if you're a online news publisher, traffic is coming down, referred traffic is coming down, and it's going to continue to go down because Google knows that they're in a losing game by trying to sell people sponsored positions on search. So that's only going to continue to be a problem. So now if you're online only, you have to figure out how to get authentic engagement on your site or on your app or whatever that case may be through your own marketing techniques. For newspapers, you're already there. Like if your main product is a print product and you don't have much of an online presence as is, besides your own level of marketing, then you've been here for a while. And so your position should be now open the doors and welcome the online publishers who are about ready to be refugees from the internet. And you're going to tell them like, oh yeah, I remember the days, and you guys can compare notes. But if you're a newspaper publisher and your product is mostly analog and in print, I think that you should lean into the fact that that is exclusive information that you can't get anywhere else. And then the online local publishers, they're going to have a hard time with advertising here coming up real soon. So if you're in print, you're probably going to be good as long as you start learning the business basics, which is, you have to have marketing, you have to have sales, you need to have money coming, you have to have cash flow, put some money away every month, and have a strong savings account. That's where you should try to be headed.
Yeah.
If you're online and you're online only, you're going to have to start figuring out some new products and services that you're going to have to sell to make cash flow happen, because advertising is not going to be the future. Because if Google is leaving advertising, you should be worried.
Yes. Agreed. And I've thought that too. I think Google will be okay as an organization. They've still got
Sure. Yeah.
G Suite and they've got YouTube and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
search, I don't know about search. They had their money printer for decades, and they'll be
Right.
fine. I'm not too worried about them on this podcast. But so you just talked about like the business basics and kind of back to that sustainability piece. I think you mentioned in our first talk that a lot of the focus has been on giving local media companies a longer straw to drink out. And you said you don't want a longer straw, you want to stand up. I forget the
Yeah.
exact metaphor you used.
Yeah.
So besides, like, I know you're working on Lantern, and clearly you think about this stuff a lot. What does that look like for you, for like you as a publication? What do you think about, like, in terms of revenue streams, and what else are
Yeah.
you thinking about? Yeah.
It's a good example. So what was we I was making honestly, the metaphor came out of me just making jokes with my Lantern co-founders, but also my business partner. So the Lantern co-founders are myself, my Mineral King Publishing business partner, Reggie Ellis, and then my friend Ryan Clark. So we each own a third in the company. And we were talking with some publishers down in Ventura County, and we were talking about like just what what's being offered to local publishers to quote unquote sustainability. And I put it in quotes because I don't think that they actually want to see us be sustainable. I think that there's something that they're getting out of the deal. And so I think it was Ryan that said it. Pretty much every tool, like we're drowning in the swamp and like our heads below water, but we just have like a straw that reaches the surface so we can breathe. And then these companies come in, like say Google, for example, with they have like Google News tools, things like that. And what they offer you is just like a longer straw. They're not trying to help you up out of the water. They're just like, here's just a longer straw. So you can, like, you're going to continue to sink, of course, but we still want you to breathe. And so I was like, well, I don't want to sink anymore. I just want to, like, I would like to just stand up and walk around a little bit, not just be underwater. And so uh, what I am saying in that in particular is be very careful of the things that people are offering you to help you out because they're not actually offering you a solution. They're just offering you a thing that is going to keep you around longer. Like you're still dying. You're still sinking, but like you're just prolonging the end with most of these tools. A really good example of this that I found was Comet. I want to say it was Perplexity. Yeah, I think it's Perplexity, which is an AI frontier company. They are offering small publishers a amount of money to scroll the internet, not the internet, but your page, your work. So if you're a publisher, you signed on for Comet, you would be paid an amount for allowing this AI frontier company to scroll your stuff. And I guess, oh, maybe the term is crawl your
I
stuff.
think that's it. Yeah, that sounds
You
right.
understand what I'm saying. So the thing is, like, if that's not enough money, if they're not paying you enough money to fund even one journalist, it's not worth it. Because think about how far these tech companies have reached before. They they did I remember when the internet started, and I remember when the social media companies started, and nobody cared about local publishers at all. Facebook and Google did not care whether we were going to survive or not. And they came in and and with their ad tech model and took most of the advertising out of our communities, taking ad dollars and local dollars out of our communities. And we've gotten exactly what in return, not only as publishers, but as communities. Now we have an AI company coming in and saying, like, well, we'll give you some of that money back, but in exchange, we're going to get this information. That would tell me that if they're willing to reach that far into a local publishing space, that close to the community main street level, that we have high shelf information that they want. And so I'm not ready. I'm not ready to give it away for free. I'm not ready to give it away for fraction of what it's actually worth because we have high shelf stuff that they can't get and they want to pay us low shelf wages for it. I'm not doing it. And if you're if you're a publisher that wants to stay in it for the long term, you shouldn't do it either. In fact, I would suggest that you put a hard paywall up as soon as you possibly can. Start leaning into the fact that you have exclusive content, that you can only get it here, and you can only get it here by subscribing. And then you have a white hot core of your audience who are willing to pay for that, and then grow it from there. And when an AI company comes in and says, I'll pay you for that, you put a premium on and you say exactly how much is like, this is how much I want for it. Because at that point, you have reliable cash flow coming in. You have a white hot core of subscribers that want your stuff, and you're going to probably live on into the future without these AI companies. You don't need their money at that point. Don't take it, because they're going to take as much as they can, and they're going to give you as little as they can back. And more importantly, they need this stuff because these AI companies have already crawled the entire internet. They're going to Reddit now for the most up-to-date stuff. I don't know if you've been on Reddit. I probably wouldn't go there for my news source. It's not exactly verified or contextualized, but it's right now it's the best that these AI companies have. And they know it. And they're going to have to fix this problem at some point. It's worth it to note that Perplexity is raising the flag saying, I know I have this problem. I know I need to fix it. How can I fix it in the cheapest way possible? That's a sign to us all. Like, do not sell.
Yeah, that's a good message to get out there. That's kind of a red flag, green flag. I don't know what you call it for how
Yeah,
it's trending.
that's a red flag.
Yeah, I saw something recently also. You Prince, are you familiar with him? Co-founder or founder of Cloudflare. He's like a
Yes.
billionaire, and they just
Yes.
announced they're doing a paper crawl. I think it's more, and seems to be. I've been trying to get him on the podcast. He seems to be more aligned with local publishers. He owns a newspaper, and I think lives in Park City in Utah, Ski Town.
I think his wife was more of a passion project for his wife.
Yeah,
He is actually the one that I first heard the term, this is a few weeks back, no click internet, which is a term we're going to start hearing more and more, which is kind of what I described, which is you're going to be going to these AI companies for information because they're going to scroll the internet, they're going to crawl the internet faster than you can. And so what happens after there's no ads? To fund the people who put things on the internet. And he was the one, I think it was an MSNBC, not MSNBC, CNBC interview, who said, well, if you want reliable information, you're going to have to pay for it. That's just the future of this. Um, and and yeah, I've been mentioning his name a lot lately.
yeah, and also just kind of side note to anyone out there who's listening to this podcast, you might be interested. He also had a tweet go viral where he said, like, it was something along the lines of, do you want to lead a great life and make a good living? It's like, buy a local newspaper. And he had all the numbers. So you're not going to get rich, but you can make a comfortable living, be a big part of the community. And I think he even said, if you're looking for funding, reach out. So I'm like, that's kind of why I want to get him on the podcast too. I'm like,
That'd be great.
if we have a billionaire out there funding younger folks trying to get into space, that'd be really cool. That was what really interests me. So anybody I'll try and link to that tweet also in the show
Yeah.
notes here.
I mean, for the right price, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it at all, but I'm saying that we shouldn't do it for nothing. Like, that's if it's not gonna if it's not going to fund your reporters, it just isn't worth it. That's just the way we should look at it.
Good stuff. Okay. I'll pivot back to one of my other questions real quick. I also wanted to ask you about, so you're in the middle, you have two newspapers with Mineral King? What's
Yes.
the kind of scale of the company?
Yeah. So we have the Sun-Gazette, which is you can find at the Sun-Gazette.com. And that covers Tulare County, which is a county of about just shy of like 500,000. And then we have another newspaper in Fresno County, which is just to the north, like it borders Tulare County. And that one's called Mid-Valley Times. And then we're purchasing, well, here very soon we'll be like wet signing the asset purchase agreement for 3 other newspapers, which is, one family owns it. It's 3 different publications, and we're about ready to buy those. I think we take over October 1st
And
on those.
that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about. Like, in this, some people say declining industry, you're kind of acquiring and growing a bit. Do you have any learnings there that might be useful to this audience or anything on acquiring other? I guess you haven't really done it yet, but
Oh,
or
I
going
mean,
through that process. Yeah.
well, we bought the Mid-Valley Times in 2023, but we kind of came in and we didn't even really swoop that up. We were invited in to be their publisher, and then we ended up just buying it. Just made more sense to buy it. So, we've done this once before. We're doing like, this is our second go around, I guess, maybe third, depending on how you want to consider it. Uh, I would say to anybody thinking about it, don't do it. It's a big mistake. I hate every second of this. I am in a prison of my own making. No, I mean, here's the reason why we did it. We think that one, there's there is a need for good local information in these rural towns. It also made good business sense. We were lucky. We're lucky that it makes good business sense because it's also an adjudicated newspaper that has public notices coming in. So there's a cash flow mechanism already built into it, which is what we're relying on at least for right now. I don't think the public notices are going to be here forever. I think it's a good revenue stream if your state has it, but states are also getting rid of it. New Jersey just got rid of theirs. Florida got rid of theirs a couple years ago. So like these states that want to be less transparent, if they see the opportunity to be less transparent, they will. But for right now, if you're a newspaper of general circulation, that is a revenue stream that you can rely on. So we see the opportunity of funding it now. We hope to fund it into the future with some of the ideas that we were just talking about earlier. And that's kind of the play here because in terms of AI, in case I haven't made this abundantly clear, AI is an information game. It's not an entertainment game. It's not an advertising game. It's an information game. And so the more information you have, the closer to the ground you are, the better off you will be. And so we know that we think we're putting our chips down, that there are brighter days ahead for the local information economy, which is the local news economy. And so I'm very much hoping that we are getting in at the ground floor of a new era of information. And I think that if you're a conscientious newsroom and you're conscientious publishers, you'll do well because you're no longer now competing in what I call like the entertainment space, right? Because news currently is competing with the likes of Netflix and every other distraction that anybody has on their phone because that's how we fund this thing. We fund it through sponsored content or through advertising. But everybody has that with audiences around the globe or audiences in your backyard. So the if you can remove yourself from that competition where we are definitely losing and put ourselves in the competition of information, well, now it's a whole different game with a whole different set of rules. And I like our chances there. So I'm all for it. I think if you're in a position to buy this thing and you can sustain it in the short term, there's brighter days ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the optimism, and I agree. That's why I run this podcast.
Good.
So this last one, and you've touched on a lot of this, but I want to ask it anyway. If another publisher came to you right now and said, Paul, how do we make this work in our community? What advice would you give them based on your experience and the way you're thinking about things? Say it's a traditional media, small to mid-sized local news publisher.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that there is no substitute for the in person, press the flesh type of interaction. Like, I think that we have such a synthetic information ecosystem these days. People are really tired of it. People do not like having meetings over Zoom as much as they enjoy having meetings in person. It's more convenient, and there's certainly a place for it. But your main mode of communication in a meeting should be in person because there is so much body language that happens. It's not just the words coming out of your mouth, right? So if I were to give somebody advice, you would start off with be in your communities and find the largest nexus you can of where the community meets. So in the communities that we're buying the newspapers from in West Fresno County, so, I mean, like places that are obvious nexi
Next time.
in these communities are schools. So we're talking to people, we're talking to school board members and the cities because everybody's got to go there and pay their water bill. And everybody who has kids has to go and send their kids to school. And then it's, if they have a chamber of commerce, we're there. So like those are three places where we know that we need to get to know those people. So at that point, you can start to figure out what's the most important things to these communities and what they want to know. And then your podcast is littered with good ideas on how to cultivate and generate an audience and maintain an audience. So I won't rehash all of that. I think that when I think that once you have that audience, once you're kind of in the pocket with these communities and what they care about, you need to reinforce that you're there for the long haul. So something that we do on a regular basis is events. So not necessarily events for money, but events that we put on ourselves. So for us, we have like news and brews. So I have a lot of friends in the local brewing space. And so we kind of come together like, hey, can we just set up a table, tell folks to come in. First round is on us. We give them a newspaper. We put the newspaper in their hand. We have them sign up for the newsletter whenever they come in, and that's like our sign up sheet. And then at that point, we're just kind of working the room and talking to the community members, letting them know like this is what a journalist looks like. This is what our job is. This is why we care about the community. And I think I think just doing that very basic thing puts you in people's memory as trust this guy because he showed up. And right now, not a lot of people are showing up for the easy things, Like there was a interview I was listening to with Obama some years ago, and I think it was like right after the 2020 election or like during 2020. And he had said like how different the landscape is because whenever he was going out to Iowa, he was talking with the local editor, and that guy would write a story and be like, okay, I grilled him on the questions. I grilled him on the things that matter. Here's my perspective. And now that guy doesn't exist because that paper got shut down. Something like that. And now people are just listening to, I mean, where do you think they're getting their information from? Like they're going to get it from one of the national sources. And so like, and I don't know about you, but I don't really trust those guys to tell me
Nope.
what's best in my community. So by just being there, and sorry, and Obama had said too, he's like, I would run into people who said that they would never vote for me, but they liked me. And he's like, and that was enough. He's like, they wouldn't vote for me for this reason, that reason, or whatever, but they didn't think I was a bad guy. They
Hmm.
just didn't agree with me. And so you could disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that we've lost that. And I think that if you show up and you hold these events and you invite people out, they'll come and meet you halfway. And then even if they don't like your coverage, or even if they think that you could do a little bit more with sports, and you explain to them why you can't or why you don't think it's important, they'll listen because you're right in front of them. It's really hard to be mad at somebody when they're right in front of you. Like you get a whole different feel. And so if you're gonna do it, like that's really you gotta put in the footwork to actually do it.
That's great. I really like the idea of the brews and news. That would get me. There's beer.
Yeah.
Okay, here, take all of my information.
We do
For an
really well
IPA.
with those events.
Well, look at you and I. We look the same. We're both the guys going to the microbreweries. Awesome. All right, Paul. This has been great. Can you tell people where they can find you online? You, Mineral King, Lantern, anything else you want to put out there or promote or have me link to?
Yeah, so they can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Paul Myers, Myers. Please do not type in Meyers. You will go to a different Paul somewhere else on earth. I don't know how those guys got the predominant name spelling that they did. Their marketing machine was better than mine. And you can find us at the Sun-Gazette and at the Mid Valley Times, just online. And then you can find Lantrn, and that's Lantrn.ai. And I'm currently reworking that website. It has not gone live, but you can check out what we have so far and kind of see what we're working on. And you can link to our socials there too, so you'll be able to find that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have some clickable links for all that stuff in the show notes. Well,
Thank you
Paul,
so much. I appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you. It was a pleasure once again, and we'll stay in touch, man. Thanks for being
Of
here with me.
course.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.